Okay, welcome everyone to the June 14th Delaware County Sustainability Commission meeting. I am chairing in place of Carol Martzoff. I am the vice chair, and we will start with roll call. So if you can just unmute and say here for me, please, I'd appreciate it. So Steve Clark,
Here.
David Director,
Here.
Crystal Gall,
Here.
Cephas Hales Richardson, Carol Martzoff, Julie Prey, Sean Stansel, Grace Bennett, Joy Washington, Gina Barrett,
Here.
Laura Goodrich Cairns,
Here.
Mark Manfrey, Ed Orner, Brooke Stayer,
I'm in the meeting here in replacement of Brooks for today. I'm John. Hello, everybody.
thanks, John.
We'll just have to vote you in, John.
I know to make it official, but thank you anyway.
Thanks for having me.
Kara Mobile
Here.
and Rebecca Yurkovich.
Here.
Great. So we just need now one public member, right?
Yes, I can text Carol really quick.
Okay. All right. Well, while we are waiting on that, I failed in my responsibilities to have an interactive question, but we can do this old school and find out how many people have instituted some kind of sustainability measure for their vacation, and if you have any cool ideas for that. And you could just get Barbara.
I will admittedly be as basic comes, but I was just sharing this story. We have a big family vacation with siblings and things like that, and we would bring the quote unquote drinks, and there'd be a case of this and a case of that, and there was always a couple cases of water bottles. And last year we all kind of, a couple of us ganged up and was like, there's no need for this. There's glasses here, there's water here, like no more water bottles. So we all agreed, no more family events or parties. Will there be any water bottles? We'll all just drink regular water out of our glasses that we have. So a minor thing, but something nonetheless.
Oh no, that is so important. That's a little pet peeve of mine, especially for family events. I'll have to tell you, we're having a barbecue for Father's Day, and so oftentimes most people remember that I don't actually buy like paper towels or napkins, which may sound really weird. Like, how do you get through that? You know, if there's an accident, you know, you have towels, hand towels,
Right.
toilet paper. You don't really want to touch it with a hand towel. But yeah. So it isn't necessarily a vacation, but it is a family event.
I can share if no. Oh, go ahead, David.
We're not doing something unusual, I think, but we're doing a bit. We're again going to DC for our vacation, and we're taking Amtrak. We will be taking the Metro, bringing our senior Metro cards, which are a wonderful invention. And we'll be doing all our traveling on public transit. And that is our small bit this year. Also less expensive.
That's awesome.
In a similar vein, so I vacation at Long Beach Island, New Jersey. We do not drive anywhere once we are on the island. So as soon as we get there, it's always biking or walking, which is a nice treat.
That's great. Any other ideas? I will tell you a little tidbit that in years past, I've selected places to stay that are eco-friendly, have some kind of certification where I know either, they have instituted energy efficiency measures. Some places that have been more remote, like on an island, I've picked like eco lodges, so they do exist. Nothing crazy this year like that, but I have in the past. So
How do you find them, Jacqueline?
it all depends specific to the island. Usually I will just Google like eco lodges or environmentally friendly places to stay. And especially if you're going overseas or like Caribbean or something like that, that tends to be able to pull up some information that way on different websites. Very cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. I can share my screen of the agenda. And here I will share instructions for public comment. As you can see here, members of the public can email us at sustaindelco@co.delaware.pa.us. And if somebody were to join, they can request a comment in the Zoom chat or the question. And we will have public comment shortly. Did everyone get a chance to check their email to review the minutes? Although we don't have a quorum, so I guess we can't approve them, right? Did you hear from Carol, Becca?
No, and I did text Julie as well, so I apologize if you see me looking down. I'm like monitoring the phone situation.
Okay, so then why don't we move to, we'll hold the minute approval as well as the designation of county alternates as we get closer to the 3 o'clock hour. And remind me, Becca, I know we had talked about July attendance, who was around to have a more in-depth, I guess, working session, right? So the meeting would be July 11th, is it? Yeah, July 11th in the evening, 6 p.m. So we wanted to get a sense, and I'll stop share for a second here, of how many that are with us right now would be available for that July meeting. And John, you're allowed to answer because hopefully you will be designated as an alternate as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Either Brooks or I will certainly be there.
Okay, great.
I will
But
not.
if people want to just, thumbs up, hands up, whatever, that would be great. So we know. So July 11th, that's a Thursday, 6 p.m.
Nope.
David's away.
I'll be away that week as well.
Crystal's away.
It would work for me. It's Gina.
Tina's good.
I'm also around.
It works for me. I saw Steve's hand was up. John said he was good. Anybody else know? One way or the other? Well, we could put out a call specifically by email. Maybe either like some kind of poll, Becca, where people can easily respond, since we already have the calendar invite, so which just automatically, I guess, gets accepted. And that would be by Zoom. Okay.
Jacqueline,
So
before
shall
we
we
move
move?
on, would we be able to just introduce the folks that are on the call today who are on to serve as alternates, even if we can't vote them in today, just so we know who's in the room? So that would be John and and Michelle.
Sounds great.
So John, do you want to introduce yourself? I know we heard a little bit, but
Sure. Yeah. No, thank you for having me. So I've been in the solid waste and recycling business for 16 years. I've managed in markets. I was most recently a VP for GFL Environmental out of the Colorado, New Mexico region. My travels over the 16 years have taken me to different markets, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Colorado, New Mexico, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. And so certainly been exposed to a lot of different laws, if you will, a lot of regulatory compliance and environmental compliance laws from each state. They all differ. So excited to be a part of the DCSWA. I started here in April, and very much looking forward to working with this group, and I'm excited to be a part of the team here.
Sounds great. Thanks, John.
Sure.
Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle Wheeler, a permitting manager here at the Delaware County Conservation District. My travels have not taken me as far as where John has been, but yeah, I've been here for 16 years, mainly as a technician doing MPDS permitting and inspections on construction sites throughout the county. Thanks for having me today. Hopefully I can help out as an alternate moving forward.
Well, thanks for being here and for your willingness to participate.
Yeah, no problem.
and Jacqueline, we also have two other new folks who are not typically on with us. Dr. Taylor's interns, Yamel and Mackenzie as well.
Oh, great. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Great. So, Becca, should we just move on to your update? And then we can circle back, hopefully.
Sure, let's I would recommend doing Mike first, just in case he has to hop off.
Oh, yeah, sure, Mike. Definitely.
Well, thanks, Becca. Thanks, everyone, for having me on today to talk about stormwater management and planning here in Delaware County. Some of you may know we were successful in obtaining a phase one, a grant for completing phase one of an Act 167 plan for Delaware County. For those who don't know what an Act 167 stormwater plan is, it's an intense analysis of a watershed. But it includes modeling, looking at development trends, zoning, and development projections. In this particular case, we're not just looking at one watershed, however, we're looking at the entire county as a whole, all the watersheds. So they'll all be modeled in the future. Within an Act 167 plan, there are requirements that DEP has that we must address. We need to address water quality, groundwater recharge, preventing stream bank erosion, addressing overbanking during extreme events, and then just generally managing extreme events. As I mentioned, we received funding and we're within phase one of the project. Phase one, very simply, is scoping. For phase two, addressing data needs, data gaps for our modeling purposes. A critical part of phase one is reaching out and engaging what we call a WAPAC, or Watershed Plan Advisory Committee. In a normal sense, or typical sense, I should say, it would be all the municipalities within a watershed. But in this case, it's all municipalities within the county, all 49. And we actually just completed having 4 meetings in the four quadrants, if you will, of the county, and having that initial kickoff for our WAPAC. And what does a WAPAC do? They're critical, to say the least. For our plan to be implementable, it needs to be accurate and realistic. So, and at a county level, we just don't have the knowledge that local municipalities have. So we absolutely need to have that engagement, and we need to have that feedback from our municipalities so that our recommendations can be, like I said, implementable. At the same time, as we work through this planning process, and we have the WAPAC there to vet our process. Later on in the process, they'll be vetting our recommendations to make sure that what we're recommending in our plan is reasonable and achievable. So like I said, we just wrapped up our first round of meetings with our WAPAC. We're also engaged or analyzing our data needs. One need that it's become very clear to us is that we don't have a county-wide stormwater system that kind of lays out all the municipal conveyance systems for stormwater management throughout the county. We've found that those systems differ greatly from municipality to municipality. Some municipalities have CAD level detail for their systems. Many municipalities have GIS level detail, and then some municipalities have paper maps, which are fine, absolutely fine. But what we plan to do as part of this process is collect all of that data and develop one system. That'll help us with our modeling purposes so that we can accurately model the watersheds and find trouble spots and then find potential solutions. Another effort we're undertaking right now is engaging our stakeholders. It's all the partners that we have here in the county, like the Conservation District and collaboratives, stormwater authorities. It also includes neighboring counties, City of Philadelphia and Newcastle County and Delaware. So, we can be on the same page as them with regard to our modeling efforts so that our models speak to each other. And then our recommendations here again can be similar and consistent. Another thing we're doing currently within phase one is analyzing our current plans to see where they're consistent, where there may be inconsistencies. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're looking at those plans and as a rough starting point for this overall countywide plan. And then there's a fair question that's been floating around. Why do this countywide plan if we already have stormwater plans? And that's a fair question. The short answer is all of our plans are out of date, out of compliance from DEP compliance and standards standpoint. So this countywide plan will bring all of the county, all of our watersheds up and make us compliant. Secondarily, but importantly, having one countywide plan moving forward will make it much more or will provide a streamlined process and foundation for updating that plan and keeping everyone compliant in the future. And then lastly, having one plan will allow us to have consistent recommendations throughout the county versus having different recommendations based on different watersheds. But so that's where we stand right now in phase one. We'll be applying for phase two funding in August. And we're very hopeful to obtain that funding. With that funding, we'll be able to bring a consultant on board to do the intense modeling and data collection and development that we need. But that's where we stand currently. Happy to take any questions that anyone has with regard to the process. 167. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, thank you for the update. I'm sorry, so what is the timeline in terms of when you will have the official plan? What is that end date? If you have it in mind, just curious how long that'll take.
Actually yesterday at our last meeting, someone asked that same exact question. And I gave the TBD, to be determined, answer, because I don't want to, well, get anyone's expectations too high, A, and then B, we have a lot of work to do to get to that, well, really the modeling is going to be very time consuming. And it's only been done, as far as I know, one other place in Pennsylvania that they've done a soup to nuts countywide plan. So long story short, I don't have an answer that I can give you for that question. Sorry.
That's okay. But it's not I mean, in a sense, you kind of told us because it isn't like something we could probably expect in a year.
I would guess probably a year out from August, maybe next year this time we'll hopefully be
Draft.
well within the process. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Mike, I know I've been through the presentations, but can you share? So one component of the Act 167 plan is typically a model ordinance. I know that was just updated in the past couple of years, but can you share kind of what the intention is with that and how it would fit into this new plan?
Sure. Typically, the Act 167 process, right, engages municipalities in the WAPAC and then does intense modeling for a storm or a watershed. And then after those recommendations come out, the last step would be adopting a model ordinance or rolling out a model ordinance. And then that ordinance is adopted by the municipalities within the watershed. And that ordinance would implement the plan. And that's another fair question that I've already received. Why are we doing this if we already have a model ordinance? Well, the model ordinance that we released a couple of years ago is our best attempt to provide a compliant ordinance that brings municipalities into Act 167 compliance without the benefit of having that modeling and to support the ordinance and its means of implementing Act 167. We're confident that ordinance is still absolutely compliant with Act 167, but with this planning effort, we see the potential for value added amendments to those who have already adopted the ordinance to kind of dial, if you will, dial in or refine their ordinances to be more specific to the features of their area within the watershed. But yeah, we see this as like a kind of a value added element at this point, and we can kind of, like I said, dial in those ordinances, but not necessarily. We don't see any need at this point there'll be to replace those ordinances that are already adopted.
Thank you.
Is there any funding opportunity for municipalities to, I guess, implement some aspects of it? Like, let's say that, and I know this is so far down the line, but anyway, just an idea that comes to mind that I know in the state of New Jersey, they did something where they significantly improved their requirements, for instance, for the MS4 permit for towns. And so they provided funding to everyone to help ease the burden of implementing it. I wasn't sure if like the state of Pennsylvania had anything like that.
We're constantly looking for funding opportunities for municipalities, and when we find them, we absolutely will send them out and share them. Act 167 is kind of a more reactive program in the sense that, it's proactive and reactive. So it addresses new construction. So new construction, it's got to, manage the flow and retain a certain amount of stormwater on site during events. And it doesn't really, it addresses new development, but it doesn't address so much legacy issues, with exception to redevelopment. that meets a certain threshold. So there is some opportunity to do some kind of retrofit stuff within the scope of redevelopment. But those kind of standalone projects that might happen, in like say a municipal park or property, would kind of be outside the scope of Act 167 compliance. That's more focused on development. But I will put in a plug for Glen Olden. They went through the county supported a project recently in their primary park in the borough that actually had a riparian area restoration built into it, some stormwater management built into it, and it turned out very nice. So, and I'll give another plug to Glen Olden because they really they cobbled together funding from all sorts of different funding streams to make that work, and they were very creative, and it ended up being close to $1 million project that they were able to cobble together. So. It's a good example of a municipal project that was successful in that sense.
Yeah, that's great. Good. Anybody else have questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you, Mike. Look forward to hearing more as this progresses.
Phase 2, I'll be back to talk when I get phase 2 funding. I'll be back to talk about it.
Okay.
Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, anytime. All right. Moving back to our agenda. Looks like we are going to call one of our other members so that we can approve our minutes from May and designate our county alternates. Right, Becca?
Yes, so Mark Manfrey is here with us on the phone. He is currently running the senior games.
Exciting. Get those senior games in. I assume they're outside?
Not this one, that's ping pong. So I'm actually got to run back in.
Oh, lucky you, you're inside for that. Okay, so minutes. Can I get a motion for our May minutes?
I move we approve the May minutes.
Thank you, David. Second?
I'll second, Crystal.
Thank you, Crystal. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, then all in favor?
Aye.
I assume
Aye.
aye, thumbs up, hands up. Fantastic. All right, minutes are approved. County alternates. Becca, how do you want to go about this? Just a slate? You have names?
Sure, so we can go through the full
Read
list at we can go through the full list at once, and I will say I missed planning on this list. So alternates we will
right.
be approving today will be Michelle Wheeler for the Conservation District, Ann Stauffer for the Parks and Recreation Department, John Bosch for the Solid Waste Authority, Sue DePompio for the Office of Sustainability, and Peter Williamson for the Planning Department. And we'll need a motion, preferably from a member of the public side, just because they're not.
We can do these all in one vote? I'm
Yes.
assuming. Well, I move we accept the slate as presented.
Fantastic. Second?
I'll second again, Crystal.
Thank you, Crystal. Looks like we still have all members here. All right, so all in favor, please say aye.
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 Mark?
Aye.
All right, just checking, make sure you didn't run away. Okay, any opposed? Anyone abstain? Fantastic, thank you all.
Thank you.
Especially those
Thank you,
that
Mark.
jumped in.
See you, Mark.
All right, at this time, are there any comments from the public?
None in email.
Okay. Nothing else? All right. Becca, then you are up, if I have this correct.
Sure. Alrighty. So I'm gonna give a brief update today. And we'll have some discussion too. This way it's not just me talking the whole time, but largely today's update is going to be on our conference. And excuse me while I put headphones back in. Alrighty. Update. First, we're going to do our conference recap. And for perspective, when I'm going through this, it's going to seem like I'm sharing some pretty straightforward information that most of you know. But the reason that I'm doing that is as part of our funding for this year's conference, we were very lucky to receive $5,000 from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection for an energy education grant. And as part of that grant program, one of the requirements is that we have to present our project at a public meeting, as well as sharing the outcomes. So this public meeting serves as that requirement, in addition to also just letting you know how it went. So here's some nice pictures to share. And I'm also happy to go through some of the accomplishments. So for this year, we had over 300 registered, but we had 258 professional participants in attendance, and that's in person. Not all were there at the same time, but we touched 258 people throughout the day. We also had more than 50 student participants. We had 9th graders from the Chester Upland School District. We also had 55 virtual participants, and we could see that from the live stream. They were actively on during the day. That number has since risen of folks watching the presentation after the fact. And then we also had 39 exhibitor organizations during the day. So from preliminary survey results, so we currently have a survey out asking folks who were in attendance to share their thoughts, feelings, and ideas. Some of the things that people are saying that they loved were the speakers from our morning sessions, which included Miss Pennsylvania, Miranda Moore, who spoke about sustainability in the fashion industry. Archie Philshow from the Aero Aggregates, which is a company we have here in Eddystone, and John Jackson from the Stroudwater Resource Center. People also were very excited about networking with exhibitors and the opportunity to do informal networking during our lunch hour. Other things folks seemed to like was the opportunity to pick sessions in the afternoon that did align with their interests, and the sessions that had increased interactivity. So I know Gina and her team over in planning did a really fun session that had Legos, where folks got to apply what they were learning, and people really enjoyed that kind of session. For those who were in attendance that are on the meeting, are there anything else that you would like to share that you particularly liked about this year's conference?
I mean, I thought it was all great. So I was trying to think if there was anything new in particular.
That's okay. We'll bring it back around at the end.
Mhm.
You know, I particularly liked Gina's traffic simulation, and I have decided that we really need to have a rotary at the intersection of Monroe Street and Providence Road 252, and that it would work perfectly. Just needs a little bit of taken out of that parking lot.
Awesome.
I'll share that feedback. Thanks.
Awesome. So we'll continue on then. So other things to share from surveys. So everybody loves a good chart. Some of the questions that we asked were, following the conference, I feel more equipped to implement sustainability in my everyday life, in my business or organization, as well as in my community. And overwhelmingly, we saw that our participants either strongly agreed or slightly agreed with this statement. And the really interesting thing is we're able to compare results with what they said ahead of the conference, as folks were asked the same question of how comfortable they were during registration. And again, so this is a really nice baseline to see that people were slightly and or strongly more agreeable that they were able to implement sustainability practices in their life following the conference. And there's the municipal community survey results as well. Oh, no, it didn't update. Oh, well. So I'm happy to share. I don't know why my numbers didn't go in here, but I had read this in the beginning actually, so we don't even need to see this. I apologize, but we already shared our numbers. So here are some more photos. And I'm happy to share some of the things that we also learned about this conference of areas for improvement for next time. So from soliciting feedback from our speakers, we heard that particularly those in the breakout sessions would really prefer to have additional time, and some felt rather rushed. We noted that this feedback was largely from those speakers that participated in sessions that had multiple speakers. So we had an energy breakout session that had 3 speakers in one presentation. I know Gina's presentation had 3 folks in one presentation. And then our community designations or our municipal certifications for sustainability, there were 5 people in one session. So we know that I think a lot of those speakers would have preferred to have just additional time, as sharing the breakout session did really cut how much they could share about their experiences. We had also seen from folks that there was also a larger desire for having the breakout sessions in the afternoon recorded. Again, this was a decision that because we were now across 5 rooms rather than the auditorium, which we've done in the past, that logistically it wasn't going to make a lot of sense. But there was also the recommendation that we could maybe pre-record the presentations, because essentially people wanted to be able to attend more than one or listen in when they had more free time. Other things that we saw in our surveys, folks were requesting some more accurate descriptions of their breakout sessions, recognizing that some sessions were a little bit deeper in knowledge than they were expecting, and they couldn't get as much out of it as they had hoped because they weren't up to speed on acronyms or backgrounds on particular topics. We also experienced some issues with our QR codes this year, recognizing not all of our participants noted that their agenda QR code was on the back of their name tag, and that the service we were using was requiring, or it would show an ad ahead of
That was my fault, Becca.
Oh, I don't think so. I think it was
No, I
probably
wasn't
just the
aware
service
of
we
it
were
when I
using.
made the QR codes that there was ads there, but that issue has been resolved for the future.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you, Ron. Other things that we saw, so folks wanted more time with exhibitors, just recognizing because we did have more this year, there wasn't enough time for all to go around to all the tables. We did have 39. And then the last thing, we did see some feedback from our professional track that they didn't feel the format was catered well to students. They were very happy to see them participating, but there were a lot of recommendations for maybe a student-only event, which as the planning team, we also noted, because there definitely were some challenges. So for those that either participated or those that didn't participate, are there other ideas or things that would be helpful for the future to either enhance your experience, allow for your attendance, or just other food for thought. That's okay. We're just perfect.
I think my thing also froze for a second there too. So what was
Come
your
on,
question?
Jacqueline. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Did you have feedback, Jacqueline?
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, if through your conversations with other people about the conference, or even just if you weren't able to participate, if there are other considerations, please let us know as we plan for next year. And then the last thing I wanted to bring to your attention is each year following the conference, we always kind of do a food for thought question during our questionnaires. So, for example, last year we asked if people would still attend if there was a small fee associated. And this year we asked the question about switching to a virtual format. So this is just something that we are considering. It's not set in stone. It was just an idea. So potentially looking at a virtual format that would allow further accessibility of the conference, just recognizing that not everyone has the opportunity to take off during the day, or to travel to a physical location. So we wanted to put it out there. So about 61% said that they would be joining regardless of the format, which is really fantastic. About 30% said they would probably be less likely to participate if it was moved to virtual. And then there were actually 6% that said they would be more likely to participate if it was virtual. So still mixed in options. And again, there's nothing set in stone, but again, this will allow us to have a bit more information as we are planning for next year, and considering additional options for accessibility.
If
Are
I
there
can
any-
say,
Go
oh,
ahead, Crystal.
oh, you were asking if there was any questions. I think if there is a virtual option, it'd have to take a different format than the actual comp or where they're viewing. So I think there would need to be some like virtual programming for that. And I do have some feedback for like school-based participation, whether it's younger schools or if it is college level. I'm just trying to see and work out my schedule. So if it's if we can have a conversation about joining like the planning committee or what's that like, that'd be
Sure.
great to see. Or even if there was something where I could like hop in and hop out to participate, I'd be interested in that. But I have experience in virtual events as well as
Awesome.
other programming and conference planning.
Perfect. We are always looking for more help. Thank you.
Becca, well, just looking at that chart, what that says to me is that a virtual only is probably not a great idea. But virtual plus in person would be very popular. And I think that's and of course that's a lot more work, to do both. And we have to recognize that. But we also have to recognize that as we get more, this is a sign of success. The fact that people don't have enough time to do the networking they want to do, to see the vendor exhibits they want to see, to participate in the sessions they want to do. What happens with other kinds of events is they become multi-day conferences. Well, we're not doing that. But it does say that this is the cost of our success is that we are going to need to expand it and add that extra level of complication and effort if we want to expand it, if we want to have a better reach, and
That's a good idea. And yep, good points, David. I would also say that maybe something to think about with the virtual is especially if we're trying to make the event more accessible to people. People can get off work. If there are options for like a virtual session over lunchtime where people want to join on their lunch break, although other people that are physically there would be at lunch. Just other kind of things off the top of my head, maybe an early session as well. People want to go into work late, or alternate event where you have something available on a Saturday that's totally separate, but not, anyway, a little bit of some variation there. And lastly, you got the DEP grant. Did you ask for, I should know this, but anyway, in terms of financial sponsorships?
Yes. So this year, and I'm happy to pull up the list if everybody would like to see who contributed. So this has been on our website, but I'm very excited to say that only around $2,000 came out of county funding. So for the full conference, only about $2,000 was county funding, with the remaining 23,000 funded through other sources. So we were very lucky this year to have those additional opportunities. This was the first year that we did a more formalized sponsorship structure, in which there were different sponsorship levels, and each level had kind of different benefits. So some of the benefits that were offered included hosting a table. So this was specific to for-profit. We had asked any for-profit businesses or companies that they would pay $100 fee for their table, just recognizing that we still want it to be a very community-focused organization, and that any additional funding would help offset the costs of offering this free conference. Other things that were offered as things go higher up the list was, again, being included on all of our sponsorship material. For kind of our sapling level and above, you may recall, if you registered for the conference, there was a question if you were willing to opt in to allow your name and email address to be shared. Those sponsors with the sapling level and above are going to be provided with that list, which will allow them to, again, make further connections with applicable folks, and then further on. So this was something that we attempted for the first time this year, and we were able to ask some specific feedback from our sponsors about how they felt about this experience, and most of it was pretty positive.
That's amazing.
I will say some of our teams this year, or some of our organizations this year, were able to donate items too. So, for example, in the couple days before our conference, Visit Delco had donated all of the bags which were handed out. And then Capozzoli's Courthouse Cafe downstairs was able to donate all of the compostable coffee cups that we used during the day. So there were lots of different ways that folks could contribute, and that's definitely something we'll look to continue to explore as we move into the future. Any other thoughts on conference? Alrighty. And if not, now that the conference is over, I wanted to come back to our sustainability plan. So I know some of you who watched the conference, some of this will be a repeat, but I just wanted to give you an update on some of the progress to date. There's actually been a lot of actions that are underway, both through the county as well as some external organizations. So in terms of climate resiliency, when the plan was accepted or adopted, we had 48 out of 49 municipalities in the National Flood Insurance Program. And since the adoption of the plan, Sharon Hill, our last community, has joined. So all of our residents in Delaware County are now covered under the National Flood Insurance Program, or at least have that opportunity available to them. The Media Borough also adopted the Sustainable Storefront Program, which recognizes sustainable businesses here within the borough. And they are the second municipality in Delaware County to offer a program such as this. Newtown Township has a very similar program. Also, in terms of just looking for green careers, we did have an incredible panel during our conference, which introduced new career options in green fields to the students of Chester Upland. In terms of natural resources, so we are still moving forward with the tree canopy study. We are working on the administrative pieces of getting that grant up and ready and through procurement and budget. But that I'm very excited to say that should be starting very soon. There have also been additional riparian buffers installed in the Delco Woods, specifically through our conservation district and with Penn State Extension on Earth Day and Parks and Rec. Additionally, the Clean Air Council is moving forward with the creation of a Namens, Marcus Hook, and Stony Creeks watershed group. This is currently the only part of our county that is not covered by a designated watershed group. Also, one of our actions in the plan is tied to encouraging and teaching folks about the different kinds of conservation designation programs or municipal certifications that are available. And we did host a session about this at our conference. Some other updates that are going on in terms of our energy usage. As you guys know, the county has applied for several different grant funds for LED replacement on our 3 largest energy usage buildings. That was a very eloquent way to say that. So that would be for Fair Acres campus, which is in Middletown Township, the George W. Hill Correctional Facility in both Concord and Thornbury Townships, and the Government Center in Media. We've also joined our collar county, the other collar counties for joint purchasing. And as we heard last month, we have signed on with WGL and have since that meeting made our first block purchase, which will apply to 2025 for energy. Also, we have implemented off-hours energy reduction through lighting schedules, which means the lights in this building can go out at night, as when the plan was written, they were on 24/7. Some other things going on. We're currently doing an EV charging study with the facilities department. So looking at where we can be siting EV chargers on county properties, not only to meet the fleet's existing unmet needs, but also serve as potential locations for public charging in the future. DVRPC, so the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, is also working to create a guide for safe trail crossings. So what this will look at is they're currently doing case studies across the region, many of which are in Delaware County, which they're exemplary studies about safe trail crossings with intersections. And what that will be really helpful for is as municipalities are either adopting new trails or looking for safer solutions for crossing roadways, this will be able to help them identify kind of what solution makes the most sense for that area and for that kind of roadway. Also, our planning department, as you also know, are doing a Vision Zero and an active transportation plan. In terms of zero waste, we are doing the piloting recycling and composting within the government center. And I'm happy to share that between January and April, over 2 tons of waste were diverted just from doing composting back of house in the cafeteria. So that's not even asking people to scrape their plates or anything. That is literally just from the kitchen operation. We're also hosting cleanup events and recycling with Keep Delco Beautiful. And then finally, in health and wellness, our health department, GIS department, and DCOS are working to map food insecurity across the area. So that also includes looking at what different criteria categorize food insecure areas, and what truly represents accessibility of food in our communities. We're also still, out of our planning department, actively doing air quality monitoring with PADEP. And the county has since hosted walking lunch to try to get employees more active. So I know it's been a while since we talked about the plan, but it is very exciting to share that there are lots of initiatives that were directly mentioned in the plan that are moving forward, and really, again, just working toward completion. Are there any questions on the actions or any of the projects that I mentioned about the plan?
Becca, the waste from the media kitchens, does that go to where does that go? Or the compost?
Sure. So it's for specifically the composting that we were talking about with that number is from Capizoli's Courthouse Cafe, which is a catering company that hosts essentially like our cafeteria or a restaurant on the first floor of the government center. The county contracted with Mother Compost to do the pickups for that composting, and then they take the waste or the compost to Kitchen Harvest at Lynn Villa for processing.
That's
And I
great.
will say that's the prime like repository of most composting in our area.
Right, within the county limits. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
So Becca, just in regards to the composting, we're currently in the design phase of a composting farm at our Chester plant or near our Chester plant. And so we received quite a bit of grant money to develop the infrastructure and, in order to process materials in the most efficient and safest way possible. So we're looking forward to that to being an everyday thing. And we may end up having the composting farm done prior to the actual transfer stations being rebuilt as well. So in addition to composting, we'll also have everyday recycling, household hazardous waste, and a lot of different recycling streams that folks can access on a daily basis.
Awesome. And John, just for clarification, so did the Solid Waste Authority receive additional grant funds, or is this still the funding that our office had applied for?
Yes, so this is the roughly 6 million, I want to say.
Yeah, so we're still waiting on that.
Yeah, and the EPA composting grant is out. We intend to apply for that. That has a floor of 50,000 and a ceiling of 150. So that's due, I think, August 30th. So we're looking to add those funds to continue to put together the best farm we possibly can. And I think it's going to be a real asset to everybody.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Becca, do you know how much it costs for a facility like you mentioned at the courthouse to have Mother Compost take all their composts and do that a year?
That's a good question. So I'm not the one to receive the bills. But I think it also varies by frequency of pickups and how much waste you are putting out. So I think we have 2 or 3 bins that are picked up 3 times a week. But unfortunately,
that's a pretty high impact thing to hit for restaurants or schools or whatever. If it's not too pricey to kind of expand on that, if that is something that's possible, it's not too pricey.
Right, exactly.
Impact is pretty high.
Sure. And I will say, so when I had spoken last, so Alex Danovich was the one that really helped us get that set up and rolling. And I believe when we spoke with him last, he did note that there picking up less frequently, I think, for trash, ever since implementing that, but don't quote me.
And
So there's definitely opportunity for some cost savings.
sure. And Becca, the other thing too that we've discussed internally is the proposition of having composting hauled as you would with waste and recycling. Coming from an area where composting in Colorado, composting is actually mandated in the city limits of Denver. And we had 4 composting routes, but we were able to build those rather quickly by utilizing a one-stop shop. So waste recycling and composting. And once composting came aboard, folks really got into it, and folks really, it started to grow within the community. And like I said, we grew 4 routes rather quickly by encouraging folks to reduce their waste. They would save on their waste bill, and then promoting obviously the composting and recycling. And in some cases, the composting we would have to put out multiple containers because the density, it could get quite heavy if you do it right. And so a lot of these major restaurants and these commercial businesses, they were all in on it. And I think we could promote that, whether it be through the existing hauling base or potentially us doing that internally, and what that would look like capital wise.
It's all very exciting.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed it all comes together.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. So before I end, I had one more thing that I wanted to just bring up with you guys, and these are opportunities for commission members to get involved on some of the things that are moving forward in the very close future. So first and foremost, Zach Nemec, who served on our climate resiliency subcommittee for the sustainability plan, has reached out, and he wants to actively start pushing forward kind of our foundational points in the climate resiliency section, which are to define criteria of vulnerable and overburdened communities in Delaware County, and then educating municipalities on helping them identify vulnerable and overburdened communities. And what this would look like is recognizing there are so many different tools in which people can use to identify a vulnerable community right now. So there's the EJ screen, and then you see other like Justice 40 mapping tools. And with all the different mapping tools, what this would look like would be a public like meeting or a round table in which we would be meeting with community stakeholders and really going through what all the different tools are for identifying vulnerable areas within your community, expressing how to use them, and then also potentially recognizing what criteria is recommended for identifying populations vulnerable to climate change specifically. Recognizing there's both kind of the geographic vulnerability as well as the social vulnerability. So we're having our first meeting about this and what this will look like this upcoming week. But as you guys are going through time, if there's anybody particularly who wants to participate in future conversations and helping set this up, please let me know. Another thing I just wanted to point out is, so in a similar vein of establishing criteria, in our natural resources section, we have identified the action of creating criteria for open space prioritization. So recognizing that there are different needs and characteristics to look for to help municipalities identify what kind of are those priority parcels they should be targeting for preservation. On Wednesday night, I provided a presentation about the plan to the Green Space Task Force, and they voted and agreed to try to help come up with a criteria for priority open space specific for preservation of open space. However, it was recognized that the criteria for preserving open spaces for just sustainability benefits as a whole may vary from open space criteria in general. So moving forward in our next couple meetings, I would love to really kind of carve out some time where the Sustainability Commission can also talk about what are some of those criteria that we want to see prioritized when either the county or local organizations or municipalities are looking to preserve additional open space. What are those things that should be highly sought after and valued? So I know, like in historical documentation, it's always like, oh, parcels over 10 acres. Well, that doesn't work everywhere in the county. So if you had a recommendation like that for a town like Rutledge, that would completely disqualify all of their parcels all the time. So in creating this criteria, it's looking to have maybe different recommendations if it's a historically urban community versus rural, or township versus borough, things like that. So this is something that we'll hopefully be continuing to see on our agenda and talk about in future meetings. The only other two things I wanted to bring up is if any of our, oh, go ahead, Christine.
No, I just, that whole idea of what should be looked at, I think, as you guys may have discussed, it's not clear whether the county is going to be able to do an open space referendum in the near term, just because we've got other financial things we need to figure out, and we need to understand what the tax trajectory and other revenue sources are likely to look like in the county before we do that. I just, at least that's personally where I am. I think that's where the county is. But that means that to the extent money is made available for open space acquisitions at the county level, I'm very keenly interested in understanding what the significance is, either historically or environmentally. And that may mean sometimes acquisitions might not even be open space. They might be space that could be repurposed as open space, for example, for flood mitigation, stormwater management, or a property that may play a very significant role in that. So those are the kinds of twofers that I know I'm looking for. Where will this purchase substantially improve the quality of life or the benefits to the county as a whole and the immediate community or the immediate community? And sometimes that may mean that preserving more open space in Concord Township or Thornbury isn't quite as important as buying some lots and putting money into building some water, taking down buildings that are falling apart and providing retention and creating some sort of rainwater garden in a smaller place in Darby. So that's really where I'm hoping for input from this group, who has a much broader perspective on this than council does.
Yeah, agree. Those are all very good points. I know Darby Creek Valley Association, we accepted land. Now that is open space, but it was only like 7 acres, right? So when we talk about like size, like that can make a big difference, especially if it's, right there near the creek, and the other side is parkland. There are lots of opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. Additive parcels are great, and parcels that provide watershed preservation are critical. I think, parcels where it could be additive, especially in places where you're adding it to something that's not very big to begin with, can be really important, because maybe you can do something with that you couldn't do with a smaller parcel. So those are exactly the kinds of questions that, I don't know how this works. Maybe it works like a decision matrix or a prioritization matrix, but either way, I welcome input.
Awesome. And thank you, Councilwoman Ruther. I think you also raised a really good point of, as we're going through this and figuring out which properties to prioritize, they don't have to currently be green space, but maybe there are certain parcels that are currently developed or even have infrastructure on them that meet other criteria that would make it a prime part parcel for protection maybe later on or if it becomes available. And I think it's also important to note that in having a criteria like this, it not only serves to be helpful in kind of planning for open spaces, but as Councilwoman Schaefer pointed out during the Green Space Task Force meeting, having criteria like this is also an incredible tool for our municipalities and our county and our community groups to use for grant funding because it's showing that it's a published and agreed upon methodology or document for prioritizing. And if people are applying for funding that then further say like, hey, this property we're trying to preserve is hitting all these points, it's just one stronger justification to help those applications. So the only other things that I wanted to mention, if any of our either members or members of the community that are watching are located in the Namens Creek, Marcus Hook Creek, or Stony Creek areas, so that's in the very, very bottom of the county in the Marcus Hook, Bethel Township, Upper Chichester, Lower Chichester, Trainer, Chester Township, Aston, and Chester City area. If any of those folks have interest in joining and helping create a watershed group for that area, please feel free to reach out to me as we are always looking for more volunteers to help with this effort. And then lastly, I'm very excited to share with all of you that we do have an intern starting on Monday. It's a familiar face, Steve DiDonato, who is our intern. I guess that was last summer, will be rejoining us. And one of his large projects is going to be doing municipal ordinance research, specifically around illegal dumping, littering, and waste disposal practices. So just to let you all know, those things are coming down the pike. And I have spoken entirely too long. So Jacqueline, please take it away.
No, it's fantastic information. Thank you so much. Anybody have any additional questions? Well, it's amazing work. So thank you, Becca. It's wonderful to hear about all the activities that are taking place. Let's see. Okay, so we're at the point where if there aren't any public comments, we can review action items from last meeting. Do you see any, Becca?
I don't see comment, no.
All right, so our action items from last meeting, we talked about resending the draft of the solid waste plan, and we were hoping that the July meeting could be an opportunity to review and go more in depth and find out, again, get an update on where things are with submission of our official permit that we need to do versus the zero waste plan. The last meeting, we did have a really good update, but to be able to dive into a little bit more detail there. The links for the conference, obviously you provide that update. We had one conference, so that's all good. And then moving meetings around, and maybe we could just kind of keep this as like a continuing discussion or agenda item. As an idea popped in my mind was maybe for another in-person meeting before the end of the year, we could pick a location, and it might be nice to use that as an opportunity to have a refresher of what's in our plan. I mean, you gave a nice update of how things relate to that plan, but if we go to another location, maybe we could spend like a half hour, 40 minutes providing that for the public, really promoting it in person, getting comments, and then continuing on with the rest of our business. So that's just an idea that popped into mind. But, you know, we could discuss again later about that. So I think that was it for action items. And then, of course, we had talked about the stormwater update, and we just had that today. So I think that was all good. Anybody have anything to add? Anything I missed? Okay. Any new business?
I can share Concord Township is doing an event tomorrow that we'll be tabling at. It's called the Race for the Watershed, and they race rubber duckies down the creek as a way to raise money for water quality monitoring. And that will be at the Newling Gristmill if anybody is interested. I believe the activities start at 9 a.m. and go through 3.
That's great. Well, I guess we just keep on the business, like I said, picking another in-person meeting date in a different location rather than the county offices. Other than that, I don't have anything else. Oh, so then the action items are, Becca, you will poll people to see who would be around for the next meeting, which would be by Zoom, Thursday, July 11th at 6 p.m. We could see if we can have that more as a working session as a follow-up to the solid waste plan. We'll continue to add and have a discussion about location and what we do later in the year in terms of a meeting. And I think that's it, right? And then we welcome our alternates and whoever might be there for the next meeting, which is great. All right, unless anybody has anything else they'd like to add, I think we can call for our meeting to adjourn. If we could get a motion on that.
I'll move. Crystal?
Thanks, Crystal. Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day and weekend.
Thank you.